and to the republic
Republic
for which it stands,
one nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
liberty,
liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Right, so as per usual, Mrs. Holmes, if you wouldn't mind hitting some of the highlights from the management summary, that would be terrific.
We don't have a public comment, right?
Thank you. Sorry. Yeah, I'll call for public comment. Is there any public comment, Mr. Martin, for the Finance Committee meeting?
No, there is not.
I did not think so. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Sherry, for reminding me of that.
I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, I agree. Yep.
Okay, you were emailed a copy of my financial management summary and report for the year to date as of September 30th, 2020. There's not much that really is going on at this point, but an audit. And we have scanned all the documents for the auditors to review in their testing as of Friday, October 2nd. So they're well on their way. They started today on October 5th. They sent me an email saying, we're here, we're starting remotely. And if we need anything, we'll reach out to you in an email. So I presume that will go quite well. They have an awful lot of documents to review. So I think we're in good standing right now to move forward. The second Corona Relief Fund grant application.
Sherry,
yes, sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you.
I'm sorry.
Is this an independent audit versus what the town is going through, or is just this a subset of the audit the town is going
This
through?
is the audit that both the town and the Board of Ed go through, a yearly audit.
It's one audit for both entities.
One audit for both of us, yes.
And what's the feedback loop in terms of the audited reports from the the report from the auditors? Does this
They have to have everything in by December 31st.
Do they do did we get a copy of their report? Do we get an update?
Yeah, eventually when the reports are drafted, you do get copies in a bounded kind of format.
Okay.
So you will have that.
And do they ask for this board to provide any input with regards to financial
No,
oversight or any concerns or claims we may have? Okay.
not at this time. I don't know. We provided all the documents that they've requested of us, which are pretty much, reports that you have approved already as a board. So we'll just wait and see what questions they do have as they move along, and I'll keep you updated.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. Okay. The second Corona Relief Fund grant application for $1,399,784 was posted on the state website and had an initial due date of October 2nd, 2020. They've moved the due date for the push forward to October 7th, 2020. And I just listed a few of the items that we are requesting funding for, which are the items that we told you on the previous meeting, is the distant learning teachers, the health aides, bus monitors, additional PPE, transportation if we need additional buses, and then any additional technology needs. Under the expenditures, the attached expenditure summary report included the year-to-date activity for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2020. In addition, check registers outlining all checks issued from September 1st, 2020 to September 30th, 2020 have been provided for review. The expenditure summary report will include category subtotals in the October 2020 report. Tyler Technology will be issuing an update to the software. So actually the reports will have the subtotals back in as you requested. So we should, see that in October for sure. In addition, the purchase order has been created for the payroll encumbrances to start October 1st, 2020. So in that report, you also see the payroll encumbrances that were booked. Pretty much, we're just getting started. In a lot of our accounts, there's really not much more to report. The certified salaries and non-certified salaries, well, we're going to continue to monitor them. I'm not seeing anything out of the ordinary at this time. The employee benefits 210 to 295. Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield is working out well. We're getting monthly invoices, so we're able to track what our monthly expense is. And as soon as these invoices are adjusted to where they're going to look like per month, I will be putting an encumbrance PO in for insurance as well. The infrastructure services, 411, 450, we're making some adjustments to the blanket purchase orders that are encumbered to reflect actual services to be performed during the year. Account 510 to 519 is transportation, and we'll closely monitor the special education transportation as we go forward. These counts tend to be quite high, and we'll update the information as soon as we know it's available. Hopefully in October or November, we'll have some firm numbers. 520 to 529 insurance. Invoices for property, liability, and athletic insurance came in as budgeted. So we're seeing a slight surplus in the liability and athletic insurance accounts. Account 561 to 564, which is the tuition. We're waiting for the finalization of student enrollments and initial billing to determine the final cost of various budgeted amount for these accounts. Typically, it does happen in October or November. And I just want to point out the SPED private fertilities account is over at this time, which is very common. That's the first account that is over. I'll continue to monitor these and keep you updated as we move forward. As I indicated last report, account 610, 690 are the supplies, technology, and the office supplies accounts are temporarily in a deficit. I'm waiting to move this money from the general fund to the grant funds, and hopefully I can rectify that in October. We're waiting on invoices to be received so we can actually expense the purchase orders, and then I can move the money by journal entry. Account 730 to 745 is equipment. In a similar situation, we are going to be transferring a lot of those expenditures to the ESSER grant 1, and then some to grant number 2 as soon as that is approved. So again, we're trying to get the invoices in as soon as possible so we can rectify those expenditures and get them in the right place moving forward. I think that's it. If there's any questions, I could entertain those at this time.
So Sherry, this is Beth. Just a quick question for my own education regarding the grant. You say it's been posted. So does that mean it's eligible for us to submit? Like, what does that mean? That means
it's posted on the website, which means we can go in and submit the application. And what that means is we just follow through on the website with a budget narrative, the detail, and any other information that they request of it. Currently, right now, our grant application is all submitted and the edits have been made, and we're just waiting for the state's approval.
And when do we expect that state approval, or rough time?
Well, it was due October 7th, so I would assume that we would hear something either on the 7th or after that, shortly after that. because all the districts have to have that application in by October 7th.
Okay, so the application is due on is the 7th, and then shortly thereafter, you expect to hear whether, and it's for the full amount, the 1.4 million?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, thank
Which
you.
I believe we provided the board with a copy of that. So it is for the full amount.
A copy of what? I'm sorry?
A copy of what I downloaded from the website
Okay.
report.
That was sent in an attachment where it had the big buckets, Beth, of items up front, and then it went into detail even at the individual school level. So like 2 substitutes or whatever the case was at Bungay School, and then there was 1 tutor for each school, that type of thing.
Got it.
Correct. Correct.
I do not have any questions, understanding that it's the start of the year and, you know, things are basically tracking, no big surprises or concerns yet.
No,
None
none so far.
Anything else, Beth? Go ahead, Beth.
I'm sorry, I apologize if I missed it. Did you cover the unemployment compensation overrun? Because that's a pretty big one.
No, I did not, but that is going to be reduced considerably. The state has issued a credit to all the districts from the CARES Act. And I expect the October statement to have that credit in there, which means we won't be paying unemployment for quite a few months. That's what that equates to.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Ed, do you have anything?
Well, I was just looking at the special ed transportation, and my question is, I thought I noticed that, but I might know my answer even before I ask it. I did notice when I looked at Dr. Boyle's report that there was a drop at Chatfield Presti in the number of students, but I'm still saying that you're concerned about the transportation. So I'm assuming that maybe the outplaced kids, the cost went up.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Okay.
The concern will lie in the special ed outplacements,
Gotcha.
whatever that transportation ends up being. And that's usually not under our control. We're at the mercy of private facilities who provide
Right.
the transportation. We try to work with ACES as much as possible, save as much money as we can. But sometimes it just is not feasible. So
Yep.
it's just an area that I know to monitor, just like tuition. Those are your hot spots. If anything's going to happen, it's going to be in those 2 accounts. And excess costs will relieve some of that in both the tuition and transportation when we get that in February. But it's good to keep track of what's going on with our students and the costs that we have to endure moving forward.
Right. And as some of you, probably Beth, not so much, but Kristen has heard me get on this soapbox before. I've always had concern that we don't do enough locally, the Valley towns, to help with the outplacement, because lots of the ACES programs are in North Haven, Hamden, Brantford, which are farther away than for Ansonia, Derby, Shelton, Oxford, and Seymour, and so forth.
Well, sometimes Ansonia does reach out to us. And if they have a placement just like we do, we try to coordinate the costs for sure. I know in the past, Oxford, we've worked with Oxford and Derby because they have the same, bus company and so forth. So we try to piggyback as much as possible. But now during coronavirus, we got to keep our numbers down on the buses. So
yes,
everybody's doing cohort 1 and cohort 2. So we've got to be careful for that.
Well, I want to build on that a little bit. So for the students that are outplaced, aren't they going to school every day?
Yes, I believe so. I just don't know about distant learning
Right.
because they provide, the outplacements provide distant learning.
Okay, so then maybe that's a question if anybody wanted to ask of Mr. Boyle, if all the outplaced students go to school every day, because my question, building on what Ed was saying, is I hear what you're saying. I know we've coordinated in the past, but is there something that is proactively done in terms of, do all the Valley towns that all use All-Star Transportation get together at the beginning of the year and say, I've got students going to this school, this school, this school, this school, compare schedules, or is it just if someone reaches out, we will work with them type of thing?
Actually, Steve works with a lot of the districts together.
And Steve is too.
Steve is the manager for All-Star
Okay.
Transportation. And he is the manager for all the districts that are close by. And so sometimes he will reach out to them and say, I've got this, and try to coordinate it as best as possible.
Yeah.
And I've seen him do that. And then he calls me, and he'll call Derby, and he'll call Oxford, or wherever the case may be. And we'll try to coordinate it so it keeps the costs down.
Okay. It would be great too at some point. For me, it's not an immediate need, but certainly Mr. Stramello or Mrs. Mysteriak, if you want to see it sooner rather than later, it would just be great to see what those numbers are and see if we are coordinating with anyone this year.
I could give him a call and talk with him about it.
That'd be great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Was there anything else from either Beth or Mr. Stramello?
Nope, not from me.
No, I'm good.
All right, terrific. Then I would entertain a motion if I can find my tabs and go back. Windows, too many windows. I would entertain a motion to recommend to the full board acceptance of the management summary for ending September 30th, 2020.
Is Beth Mysteriak so moves?
Seconded by Ed Stramello.
Thank you, Mr. Stramello. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. The vote is unanimous. There are no negative votes, and I would also entertain a motion to adjourn.
Okay, what about the chairman's report?
Oh, I do not have a chairman's report. Thank you, Mr. Stramello, because I was not able to call up the agenda quickly enough. Mr. Superintendent, do you have a report you'd like to share?
I do not. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Ed, again. At this point, I would like to, and if there's public comment, Derek, I'm sure you did not receive anything in the during the meeting, but just in case.
Yes, no, I have not received anything.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you very much. Now it's time to make a motion to adjourn if someone would like.
This is Beth Mysteriak. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Beth.
I will second it. Ed Stramello.
Thank you, Ed. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and that passes unanimously again. Okay, everyone, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we stay in the same room for the main meeting? I'm
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay.
Mr.
We'll
Stramello,
go
if
with board and administrative correspondence. Everyone has seen the correspondence to Ms. Allison Vance. Any question on that? Okay. All right. I will now go to Mr. Martin for public comment. Mr. Martin, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two correspondence I'd like to read. The first
Okay.
one is from Elizabeth White, 49 Sagamore Drive, Seymour, Connecticut. I am writing in to urge the superintendent to bring back students back to school full-time in person. I appreciate that all intentions are to keep our kids and staff safe. To my knowledge, there have been no known cases in Seymour Public Schools. Many other Valley towns are in person 5 days a week, with Oxford choosing to reopen this week based on our same metrics and results of a survey sent to parents. The hybrid learning experience is vastly different based on a student's age. As a parent of a second grader, a seventh grader, and a sophomore, I see how important being in school in person is for each child. However, none more than my second grader, he is not able to navigate the challenges of at-home asynchronous learning by himself. At this point, 60% of his week is being at home, self-guiding his learning through various websites while meeting in person only for morning meeting, a reading mini lesson, and a math mini lesson. His teacher is amazing and is giving 150%, but it is virtually impossible to conduct two teaching assignments at the same time. Frankly, it is unfair to them. The primary years are crucial for future success in school. He missed half of first grade between long-term subs and distance learning. I need his learning accelerated in person. There is no substitute for this reason. I am proposing we begin by bringing back our K-5 students 100% in person. These students can remain in their cohort and interactions can be controlled while students receive the education they desperately need. While the intention would be to bring all students back full-time, this would be a great phase-in. The middle school could phase in next, and finally the high school, where it would be most difficult to have students remain in a cohort. It is easier for older learners to achieve more agency in their learning while at home. According to the Connecticut School Learning Model Indicators, which is updated each Thursday, we still have a 9% or a 0.9% positivity rate in New Haven County. This is considered low risk and favors more in-person learning. The secondary indicators are trending down to flat with no statistically significant changes. It is unacceptable that this issue is not up for discussion before October 14th. By the time plans are made for students to return, we will be in the midst of flu season. This is unacceptable and unfair to our students and families whose lives have been turned upside down. Accommodate this hybrid model needlessly. It is educational neglect. That's the first correspondence.
Okay,
And
the
the second correspondence, there's two email chains, so I'll read the first email first. Good afternoon. I have sent two emails. Please see attached and read thread. I would like this read both emails for public comment. Cindy Dion, 18 Carriage Drive, Seymour, Connecticut, 06483. Please let me know if this was received. Good morning, Jay, Fred, and Chris. I am sending this email out to ask for permission to use the Seymour High School football equipment for 2 players that are going to be playing in an independent league. I was informed that this wasn't possible, but I wanted to reach out to the athletic committee on the Board of Education to make sure I have reached out to all options. Curtis Dion, Jurg Sula are playing with players from Woodland and Derby. Woodland and Derby are allowing their players access to their equipment by signing a waiver. Why aren't we able to do the same thing? I do not want to spend almost $400 on equipment for my son when there is equipment available to him. Please let me know as the league practice starts next Saturday. We are willing to sign any waivers necessary. I have actually attached a waiver that Woodland is using for reference. Please give this true consideration. Sincerely, Cindy Dion. Now the second correspondence. Good morning, Jay, Chris, and Fred. I have not heard back from anyone on my request for football equipment for 2 players from Seymour High School. I did some research today on CABE and was unable to find anything regarding sports equipment, only fraternities and sororities, as well as student dress code, which wasn't helpful. Should I be asking this to be put on the agenda and voted on? My only concern is their practice starts this Saturday in Woodland. Could someone from the athletic committee please let me know how I should proceed? Thank you, Cindy Dion. And that's all of them.
Okay, thank you. Now, our next agenda item is to go into executive session, but I want to make sure that we don't mess up to do that. And so, Mr. Wilson, if you could please re-explain, especially for me, the procedure before we go into this executive session.
Certainly, my understanding of the process and procedure is that Mr. Martin will pause the stream because the board will entertain the motion to go into executive session. The board will log out of this stream and enter into the other stream that was provided, I believe, by the board's counsel. After you have your executive session, the board will then return to this current stream where Mr. Martin will then resume the streaming of the board meeting. So if the board basically just has to log out of this meeting, log into their next, however long that would take, and then log back into this stream so that Mr. Martin can continue the stream.
Okay, is everybody sure of what they are doing? Yes, Kristen?
I would just like to make a request. I'm not sure if this is possible because I don't know who has access to the Seymour Public Schools Facebook site, but can Mr. Wilson or Mr. Martin post on that site when we are about to restart our regular meeting?
I do not
Mr.
have
Wilson
access.
or Mr. Martin?
I do not have access to the Seymour Facebook site.
Mrs. Doherty does. Ms. Doherty, if you could post when we return, if that's what you're asking, Ms. Harmeling?
Yes, I just think it would be helpful for people so they don't have to just sit watching the YouTube channel until it restarts. They could just pop onto Facebook a lot easier, see if they've got an update there.
Ms. Doherty, is that okay with you?
Yes, I can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the chair will entertain a motion as is written.
This is Kristen Harmeling. I move to enter executive session for the discussion of matters concerning the superintendent's contract and evaluation requiring attorney-client protected legal analysis from board counsel and to invite attorney Fred Dorsey to attend.
Okay, motion was made by Mrs. Harmeling. Is there a second to that motion?
Second, Chris Champagne.
Seconded by Chris Champagne. Is there any discussion that is needed on the motion? Is everybody clear of the motion? Board members?
Yes. Jim
Okay.
Garofalo is clear.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Garofalo, aye.
It looks like I see all ayes. Okay, so then we have to leave this meeting then. is the consent agenda. What is the board's pleasure?
Mr. Stramello?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to remove from the consent agenda approval of the regular Board of Education minutes from September 14th, 2020.
Okay, so you want to remove, okay, the Board of Ed meeting of 9/14. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, so is there a motion now to accept the consent agenda with the removal of the Board of Ed meetings of September 14th? Yes, Mrs. Harmeling.
This is Kristen Harmeling, so moved to accept the consent agenda as presented with the removal of item A1.
Second, Chris Champagne.
Chris Champagne seconds, okay. All right. Kristen Bruno.
Aye, Kristen Bruno, Board of Ed member.
Okay, Chris Champagne.
Yes, Chris Champagne.
Jim Garfalo.
Jim Garofalo, yes.
Jay Hatfield.
Jay Hatfield, yes.
Peter Kubik.
Peter Kubik, yes.
Beth Nasteriak.
Beth Nastiriak, yes.
Fred Stanek. You have to unmute yourself, Fred.
I apologize. Fred
That's
Stanley.
okay. Do you vote yes?
Yes, I do.
Okay, board chair votes yes. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, Mrs. Harmeling.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the regular Board of Ed meeting minutes from September 14th, 2020 with one change. In item C2, my comments say in the current minutes, I'm sorry, I'll go back to making a clear minute for you, Leanne. I'd like to make a motion to accept the regular Board of Ed meeting minutes from September 14th, 2020 with the strike through of item C2 to remove the language said the splits are working out well, but. So that's my formal motion, and then I can clarify when we're in discussion.
Okay, let me, okay, that's underneath the 9/12 splits.
Correct.
Okay, does everybody else see that?
I believe we need a second.
Peter Kubik, second.
All right, Peter seconds it. Thank you, Mrs. Harmeling, for clarifying that.
No problem, thank you. And just for purposes of discussion, if it's okay through the chair?
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to clarify because it's contradictory right now. It says Ms. Harmeling said the splits are working out well, but she feels in CLS they are super uneven and this is troublesome. And then it says bus route cohorts were creative, but she does not feel it's working out. So that is my position. So if we just take out those first several words, so it reads, Ms. Harmeling said she feels in CLS they are super uneven. And this is troublesome to her. That's how the first sentence should read to capture my sentiments and hopefully what I said.
Okay, and you're leaving the bus routes cohorts we created, but she does not feel it's working out? Or
Yeah.
you're striking that?
Nope, that stays. It's just taking out,
Working out well.
yes, in the first sentence.
Okay. All right, any other clarification needed from board members on that? Okay, all those in favor of accepting the amended minutes as presented with the addition, with the changes, starting with Kristen Bruno.
Mr. Stramello,
Yes.
I had a question about C1.
Okay. Yes.
I'm not understanding the addition of the update on guidelines as approved by Fred Dorsey and shared with administration. I don't recall this list being shared at the meeting.
Okay, I'll have to ask Mr. Wilson to explain that.
The minutes, I believe, reflect the guidelines and that I shared at the meeting with the entire board. I did state that the guidelines were from the reopening plan approved by the attorney, shared with administration prior, and then the bullets are the guidelines that were shared with the board that evening.
So those were, I'm sorry, Mr. through the chair, those were your words at the meeting?
That's correct. That was the bullets that were shared, and those were previously shared with the board as well.
Mr. Samella, if I may,
Yes.
it's my understanding that the audio is not being broadcasted. I don't know if Mr. Martin needs to resume.
Yes, I have, but I'll take a look at why it's not broadcasting.
Okay.
Okay. All right, Kristen, are you all set? Kristen Bruno?
Yeah,
Okay, so I'll start again with you to the motion to edit the minutes. How do you vote, Mr. Bruno?
am I voting to approve the minutes? I'm voting to approve the minutes with the edit, correct?
With the edit, correct.
Okay. I'm going to abstain.
Okay. Chris Champagne.
I'm going to stay in as well.
Okay, Jim Garfalo.
Jim Garofalo votes yes.
Kristen Harmeling.
Kristen Harmeling, yes.
Jay Hatfield.
Jay Hatfield, yes.
Peter Kubik.
Peter Cubic, yes.
Beth Nasteriak.
Beth Nasturiak, yes.
Fred Stanek.
Fred Stanek, yes.
Ed Stramella votes yes. Okay, the motion carries 7 with 2 abstentions. Okay, so now we'll go on back to the agenda. And, okay, the policy 5141 face groupings. Okay. All right.
I will make,
Yes, go ahead, Kristen.
I just have to find my place. I will make a motion to approve the recommendation of the policy committee to add policy number 5141.8, face masks coverings as presented.
Okay, just so clarification, we also need to include those other numbers because it talks about staff also, because the 5,000s talk about students, but we have indication of staff also. So if you could just add that.
I don't know what numbers that is. Perhaps I was not listening. I was looking to call something up.
Well, it's on the list.
It says
It's on the page.
5141.8.
Oh,
I
Mrs.
believe
Hartling,
it's 4118.237.4218.237. Is that the,
I
Yes.
don't have that on the agenda that I'm looking at. And quite frankly, I can see that other board members are looking at the same document I am.
Well, it's on the one that I just opened.
Are you referencing the document or the motion that's in the agenda?
Oh, I'm referencing the document.
Okay, no problem. I'd like, so was my motion seconded, or do I just need to just restate the motion?
I don't think it was, I don't think it was seconded.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to accept policy 5141.8, 4118.27, 4218.237, face masks coverings as presented.
Okay, is there a second to Kristen's motion?
Jim Garofalo will second.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, point of
yes,
order, point of
Yes.
order.
yes.
Fred Stanek. The agenda reads just policy 5141.8. I think we need to amend the agenda.
Okay,
Here we are again. We put motions on that don't need to be there, and then we find ourselves having to revise the agenda for things that we didn't even need to put on the agenda.
okay. So how are we doing that, Mr. Stanek, please?
Motion to amend the agenda to add, in addition to policy 5141.8, the additional policy numbers that were just read. I don't have those in front of me.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, that was Mr. Hatfield.
Second, Mrs. Harmeling.
To second the amended.
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, I thought we were seconding the addition, the change to the agenda. Is that what you mean by amendment, Mr. Stramella?
I'm sorry. Yeah, you're absolutely right. We're amending the agenda. Yes. And the motion was made by Jay, seconded by you, Kristen, to
Mhm.
amend the agenda. All right, Kristen Bruno,
Yes.
okay. Chris Champagne,
Chris Champagne, yes.
Jim Garofalo,
Jim Garofalo, yes.
Kristen Harmeling,
Yes.
Jay Hatfield,
Jay Hatfield, yes.
Peter Kubik,
Peter Kubik, yes.
Beth Mysteriak,
Beth Mysteriak, yes.
Fred Stanek,
Fred Stanek, yes.
Ed Stramella, yes. Okay, so the agenda was amended. Now we go back to vote on the motion to accept the policy. Okay. Kristen Bruno,
Is there any discussion?
oh,
Are we
I'm
allowed
sorry,
to?
I'm sorry. Yes, there is discussion, thank you. It must be getting to the bewitching hour for this older gentleman here. Go ahead, Kristen.
All right. I just had a question about the section, the violations of this policy. Students with rights under special education or 504 to a manifestation determination, that's not precluded by this policy, correct?
Mr. Wilson, if you would, or Mr. Boyle.
That is correct. If they have a medical diagnosis or a 504 diagnosis, which for whatever reason they would not be able to wear the mask, then they would not be in violation. That's correct. And that's stated, I believe, in the beginning of the policy, Ms. Bruno, where it states that there's a medical reason that would come under that. So violations are for the people who would be refusal to wear.
What if their disability impacts their behavior?
This policy that's stated just for the mask piece, not necessarily the behavioral components. If that child were to refuse wearing a mask and didn't have a medical reason for it, is that what you're referring to?
Mm-hmm.
If they didn't have a medical reason, the child would be, obviously we would work with the child to try to get them to understand the importance of wearing the mask, just like we work with every child. All of our students are all of our students, so we would work with them in the same manner. We would also, if necessary, contact home to have them work with them. Sometimes we have our special education teachers and our paraprofessionals working with them as well. So this is really just for the sake of the safety if the child does not have that exemption, to really keep the mask on, to keep him or herself safe, as well as the safety of those around them.
So they have all the rights they would have under any other behavior that was in violation of policy.
That is correct.
Okay.
Kristen, I think maybe in on page 3, violations of this policy, that first paragraph under the bolded violations of policy, doesn't that address what you're asking?
Yes, I think it does. Thank you.
Okay. All right, any other discussion on this policy? Okay. All right, seeing none. Now we can vote Mrs. Bruno.
Kristen Bruno, board member, I vote yes.
Chris Champagne,
Chris Champagne, yes.
Mr. Garofalo,
Jim Garofalo, yes.
Mrs. Harmeling,
Yes.
Jay Hatfield,
Jay Hatfield, yes.
Peter Kubik, Peter. Okay, Peter muted himself. I'll go to Beth and I'll come back to Peter. Beth,
Beth Mysteriak, yes.
Fred Stanek,
Fred Stanek, yes.
Ed Stramello votes yes. Oh, all right. Peter, are you there? Okay, I'm gonna assume either way that the motion still passes. Is that an assumption that's acceptable to the other board members?
Yes.
Okay. So then we will move along. Okay, to the team of one. This is a procedure that we use for many different sports. What is the board's pleasure?
I will make a motion. This is Kristen Harmeling, to approve the recommendation of the Seymour High School Athletic Director to accept the request of Ansonia Athletic Director Thomas Brockett for Ansonia High School student Carolina Morelli to participate as a team of one with the Seymour High School girls swim team for the 2020-2021 season.
Thank you, Mrs. Harmeling. Is there a second to the motion?
Jim
Chris
Garofalo
Champagne,
will second the motion.
Okay. All right, any discussion needed, any clarification needed? This is a procedure that's done in all schools. It allows up to 3 athletes per sport, and the parents have to provide transportation and stuff like that, but it's done at most schools. Not all, but most schools. Anybody need any other clarification on that? Okay. Kristen Bruno,
Kristen Bruno, board member, I vote yes.
Mr. Champagne,
Chris Champagne, yes.
Mr. Garofalo,
Jim Garofalo, yes.
Mrs. Harmeling,
Kristen Harmeling, yes.
Mr. Hatfield,
Jay Hatfield, yes.
Mr. Kubik,
Peter Kubik, yes.
Mrs. Nesteriak,
Beth Mysteriak, yes.
Mr. Stanek,
Fred Stanek, yes.
and Mr. Stramello votes yes. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, the next recommended action is to approve the recommendation of the high school administration to appoint Karen Weaver as the junior class Board of Education student representative. What is the board's pleasure?
Mr. Stamello, point of order again.
Yes.
Fred Stanek, I do not believe the bylaw that applies to this issue talks about a junior class Board of Education representative. It talks about an alternate Board of Education representative.
Okay, so are you suggesting that we amend this motion then?
Yes.
Okay, are you amending it, please?
I will move to approve the recommendation of the high school administration to appoint Karna Weaver as the alternate student representative to the Board of Education.
I'll make that second.
Who did that, please?
Mr. Hatfield.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is there any discussion needed on this? Okay, hearing none. Mrs. Bruno,
Kristen Bruno, yes.
Mr. Champagne,
Chris Champagne, yes.
Jim Garofalo,
Jim Garofalo, yes.
Mrs. Harmeling,
Kristen Harmeling, yes.
Jay Hatfield,
Jay Hatfield, yes.
Peter.
Peter Kubik, yes.
Okay, Beth Mysteriak,
Beth Beth Mysteriak, yes.
Okay, Fred Stanek
Fred Stanek votes yes.
and Ed Stramello, board chair, also votes yes. Okay. Moving along to the high school student report, Zach Braca.
Mr. Stramello, we allowed the students to retire early this evening as the hour was getting late. So they send their apologies, but we did, as the time got later, we allowed them to leave the meeting to catch up on some sleep.
I think that was a very wise decision.
Thank you.
Okay, moving along to committee reports, Finance Committee. Mrs. Harmon, would you like to talk about this at all or just?
I'll just make the motion. No,
Okay,
do we even have a motion?
well, let's ask Mr. Stanek.
What is
Do
the
we
question?
need to make a motion to add to the agenda to accept?
Oh, no, we don't, Mr. Stramello. We've already approved the minutes, so this is just information.
Okay, all right, very good.
Of course, and so really it's just if anyone has a question, I'm happy to answer any Finance Committee questions.
Okay, are there any questions for our Finance Committee Chair? Okay, hearing none, moving along to the Policy Committee meeting. Obviously, we only discussed the one policy and we effectively did it. I did ask Mr. Wilson to get any other suggestions from the administration. Can you report on that, Mr. Wilson?
I can, Mr. Stramello, and the principals reviewed the red line policy prior to the board approving it this evening in its entirety. And they agreed that it went right along with our current plan, reopening plan, and our guidelines surrounded by masks. So they were in support of it as well. So thank you for allowing that. And they wanted to share their sentiments as well.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Thank the administrators for taking their time. All right, discussion on bus monitors as requested in a motion passed on August 17, 2020. Okay, who's good?
I
Okay.
continue to work with All Star Transportation and advertising for bus monitors. I reached out to the Derby business manager who has a list of people who are willing to be bus monitors, and he's going to get back to me this week with a few of the individuals that we can certainly interview for, along with Steve from All Star Transportation to appoint as bus monitors.
Okay, Sherry, it was very difficult, but I was able to understand it with your speaker. I don't know what happened.
No, I don't know either. I unmuted myself, so.
You did, but your voice comes across raspy.
Okay, well, probably because it's getting late and I have sinus issues, but I apologize for that. I will repeat myself. I am working with Steve from All Star Transportation on advertising for bus monitors. And I also reached out to the Derby business manager for a list of some individuals who are interested in being a bus monitor. And he should be getting back to me this week with the list.
Okay, any questions for Mrs. Holmes? Yes, Mrs. Harmelin.
Just to clarify, so does this mean, Mrs. Holmes, that we do not currently have any bus monitors?
We do not.
And
Well, except for on special education vans, of course.
Go ahead, Mrs. Go ahead.
Thank you. So do the bus drivers, and do we still feel like bus monitors are needed? Are the children doing okay keeping their masks on and social distancing on the bus?
I seem to feel that they are doing okay at this time. We had indicated that we were going to hire them for half a year and see how it goes. And they're also going to be covered by the grant. So I'm not sure if we will need them or not, but I want to at least give a good, honest effort to try to get a few bus monitors to help out. But I have not heard of anything that we are having issues with that.
Okay, Mrs. Harmeling?
Yes, I mean, my recollection was that we were going to revisit the need for them at this meeting because I think we all either assumed or hoped that we would have them already. So I don't know, I'm not going to call the minutes up to check that, but my recollection was we were going to evaluate the continuing need for them at this meeting. And I guess my personal opinion is that we should probably let it go and have you direct efforts towards other more pressing needs if the things are going all right on the buses, but that's just my one opinion. And I guess I'm gonna kind of thinking at the same time, if we're gonna consider reopening and the buses would have more students, then maybe it would be a good thing to have bus monitors at the ready if we do end up having more students on buses at some point. So scratch everything I just said. Unless anybody else has another view, just let's go find some bus monitors.
Okay. Okay, I agree.
Mr. Chairman. Jim
Yes,
Garofalo.
yes.
As trite as this might sound, is there a job description or responsible duties for a bus monitor? Are they clearly delineated so that we could know exactly what their function would be when on board the bus?
Mr.
All-Star
Wilson or
Transportation-
Mrs. Holmes?
All-Star Transportation has a job description that he'd be willing to share with us on the bus monitors.
All right, could you send that out so that we might have occasion to look at it?
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Any other questions for Mrs. Holmes on the bus monitor?
I just want to caution the board, there is a shortage with bus monitors as well as bus drivers. So that's why it's been very difficult to hire them. And in the last few weeks, we have lost 12 bus drivers. So, you know, it's been difficult to keep the bus drivers going. And so the bus monitors, the same situation as it is in Paris. It's just the nature of the beast.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mrs. Holmes, have any of the drivers been affected by the virus?
No, they just found other jobs.
Okay, thank
They
you.
moved on to other jobs.
Okay, any other questions for Mrs. Holmes? Thank you, Mrs. Holmes.
You're welcome.
Okay, going right along now, Mrs. Bennett, thank you for being so patient with us. Because I know you got to get up pretty soon.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean,
Good
go to
evening,
bed.
everyone.
Excuse me.
I know it was rough there for a little bit. I almost thought I wasn't going to make it. Good evening. Thank you for having me. I just wanted to give everybody an update. I wanted to start by saying that I'm very happy. I think things are going well. Surprisingly, I'm very impressed by, especially even in my school, the little kids, how well they have been doing with mask wearing. I know we often talk about the alternatives and what we're going to do if they don't, but we haven't received many, documented letters. And I have to say, even the littlest of kindergartners have all adapted and they're wearing their masks. They're not touching them. So we've been successful on that front. We've been successful on the cohorting and the not having people come into our buildings besides our staff and students. And I think that's been really important because we've been able to monitor, the contact tracing for our cohorts. It also helps because, as you guys all know, that our janitors have taken on this, huge other world this year with, we're having bathrooms cleansed every hour in great detail. So by not having other people into our facility, we're able to maintain those cohorts and not worry about other areas of our building that we may not have to be cleaning that we're not using. Some other things I want to tell you that are going really well is our techs that we hired have been extremely helpful. They've been helping out in the health office, and they've also been helping when there are the potential students that we have had to isolate that have presented with COVID symptoms. So we've been very thankful for that. That's been a blessing for the nurses. And overall, I have to say, as a whole, everybody's been working really hard. And I think our plan that we've put a lot of effort into has been going well. Like I said, I think I went into it expecting more hiccups, and don't get me wrong, there have been challenges and sleepless nights. However, as a whole, I think our plan has come together well and everybody's done their part. And I think Seymour has been successful overall so far because of the effort we put forward and because of everybody, working together and with this plan.
Well, thank you. I just hope that you didn't jinx us, but
Yeah, I'm gonna knock on wood.
So am I over here.
And if it does jinx, Mr. Stramello, it's not because of me. It's
No,
because
no.
of the world.
That's right. No, I'm not blaming you.
I know, I'm kidding.
That's it. Any board members have questions for Mrs. Bennett? I'll ask one more time. Any board members have questions for Mrs. Bennett? Okay, thank you, Mrs. Bennett.
Thank you.
Mr. Connors, I believe you're up next.
Good evening, everybody. How's everybody doing? Just a quick update. Everything seems to be going well. Everybody's doing what they need to do. We had a couple little hiccups again, just like everybody else. It's a new world for everyone. But we're starting to get everything under control, and everybody's got their new process going through. And, knock on wood, our schools have been good and no cases. Again, we're sanitizing every evening. And it's just, and we're still trying to take care of all the miscellaneous items we have that we take care of, daily anyways. But in a nutshell, knock on wood, we're all doing well.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Connors? I want to say that I've seen some of the, Mr. Connors, you need to take a little bit more credit for yourself. The dividers you developed for some of our staff who work with smaller groups who need to be in smaller areas. I'm talking about the plexiglass dividers that you created or somebody created that assist some of our specialized staff. So kudos to you and your people on that.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, moving right along. In light of the late hours, the chairman has no comments. Going on to board member comments. Mrs. Harmeling.
I'd like to make a motion to add to the agenda under this, under section 5, discussion and possible action on items related to school reopening plans.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
Jim Garofalo will second the motion.
Okay, can you repeat the motion again, please, Kristen?
I'd like to add to the agenda in section 5, discussion and possible action on items related to school reopening plans. Thank you, Mr. Garofalo.
Okay, section 5.
Sorry, section 8. We're in section 8. My apologies.
Okay, I thought I was messed up, Kristen.
Nope.
Okay, and to section 8, gotcha. And it was seconded by Mr. Garofalo. Okay.
Yes.
Mrs. Bruno, to add to the agenda.
Kristen Bruno, yes.
Mr. Champagne.
Chris Champagne, yes.
Mr. Garofalo.
Jim Garofalo, yes.
Mrs. Harmeling.
Kristen Harmeling, yes.
Mr. Hatfield.
Mr. Hatfield, yes.
Mr. Kubik.
Peter Kubik, yes.
Mrs. Nesteriak.
Beth Nesterik, yes.
Mr. Stanek.
Chris Stanek, yes.
And Mr. Stramello votes yes. Okay. Mrs. Harmeling.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the support on that. I know that we're going to hear about, status of the schools and the superintendent's report, but I wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity for the board to share its views instead of just doing it as board member comments, because we're then precluded from actually discussing. And believe me, I'm not trying to introduce the idea that we would vote tonight to open or not reopen the schools. But there is one thing that I did want to bring to the table to make sure, again, with the full board's consensus on a potential vote, is the idea of very quickly putting out a school-wide, community-wide survey, much like we did over the summer, so that when the reopening committee meets on October 14th, they have information in hand on the views of the broader stakeholder community. So I understand that would be a little bit challenging because Mrs. Boyle would need to, strip out much of the existing survey, add a few new questions that bring things up into the present tense. But I just think it's so critical that we query the full staff, students, and parents so that the reopening committee has that information before they start conversations.
Okay. Anyone wanting to comment on that? Yes,
I'll
Mrs.
comment.
Bruno.
I would agree. Not knowing what is going to be covered under the superintendent's report, I am feeling the need to have some more information for the reopening committee about what's happening instructionally, what families are experiencing, what staff is experiencing, and what our older students are experiencing, and whether it is truly a very successful reopening. I think we need some data to look more closely at that.
Okay. Any other board member wishing to comment? Okay. All right. So do you have a follow-up a motion? Because we added to the agenda to discuss.
Yes, I do, but I don't think I need to add anything else to the agenda, right? I can just make my motion because that was in part of the last motion to add to the agenda. So,
Well, let me just ask Mr. Stanek if that's correct, but I think you are. Mr. Parliamentarian.
I'm not sure how specific the addition to the agenda is, but I think it's okay to proceed.
Okay, thank you.
thank you. I'd like to make a motion to direct the superintendent of schools to work with the board to send out a short survey to the full school community, including parents, students, and staff, sorry, let me start over again. I would like to direct the superintendent to work with the Board of Education to send out a short survey to the full school community, including parents, students, and staff, to inform the October 14th reopening committee meeting.
Chris
Okay.
Champagne, I'll second.
Okay, seconded by Chris Champagne. Any discussion? Okay, I just have a clarifying question.
Mhm.
In conjunction with the Board of Education, what does that mean?
Yeah, I really think it just means if we could see, well, first off, I'm very willing myself to send in just some recommendations, building directly off of the survey that we already did. Most of it is not, meaningful or doesn't apply anymore, but I'm more than happy to send a first draft to the collective board and administration. And perhaps we could use Google Docs to all comment within the next day or so that it could be sent out by the end of this week. So that's what I mean specifically, Mr. Stramello, that we all would have, I'm happy to take the lead, give a first draft, and then we could all be in Google Docs and administration would let us know their thoughts and what they would actually like to know to drive a more effective meeting next week.
Okay, everybody clear on that? Mr. Wilson, do you have a suggestion for that?
I welcome a first draft. I will definitely review it with the team and we can make edits and go along. It's a wonderful idea. I think Google Docs is the best way to do it. So all edits could be live and in time. Just, I think Mrs. Harmeling, I think you stated it correctly, but I just want to be clear with everyone. I think just giving a deadline of Friday by, let's say noon, so we could just get it out in an appropriate time for all, just so that board members, I know everyone is busy and everyone is working and everyone, you know, while they have the best intentions to maybe review it, and I appreciate you offering to put the first document in, but just realizing by noon on Friday, I think it should be a complete document that we could be ready to send forth. So I don't want anyone to be upset or insulted if they didn't get their comments added by then. So I don't know if that's where you were going, Mrs. Harmeling, but I wanted to make sure. Okay.
Okay, I think that's reasonable. Okay, so we have we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion needed? Okay, hearing none. Mrs. Bruno,
Kristen Bruno, yes.
Mr. Champagne,
Chris Champagne, yes.
Mr. Garofalo,
Jim Garofalo, yes.
Mrs. Harmeling,
Harmeling lost her mouse. Mrs. Harmeling says yes.
okay. Mr. Hatfield,
Mr. Hatfield, yes.
Mr. Kubik,
Peter Cubic, yes.
Mrs. Nesteriak,
Beth Mysteriak, yes.
Mr. Stanek.
Fred Stanek, yes.
Okay, motion carries unanimously. Okay, going on, superintendent's report.
Yes, good evening. I will go in order. Pandemic action, there were nothing new since the last meeting. A reopening committee, we touched upon that. The whole board has been invited as well. The reopening committee will be meeting on Wednesday, October 14th. At this meeting, the group will hear from our district doctor, our head nurse, the director of Naugatuck Valley Health District. We will hear from the entire group. Obviously, we will have the results from this survey so that we could all discuss where we are from a health perspective, and we could use all of this information to help guide our discussion towards some possible return, metrics. Sports update. I wanted to give all a sports update. We're very happy to have our soccer, our cross country, our swimming, and our volleyball teams back in action. Obviously, we know back in action looks a little different this year, but main thing is to have our student athletes and their coaches respectfully on the field of play. And I know they're doing very well. A couple of shaky starts for some of the teams, but overall doing very well. In terms of how things are going, I wanted to touch upon a couple of things. And what I did was I asked members of the team to share how things are going. And I will obviously share this document in its entirety. But if the comments made by by some of the administrative team, for example, at Chatfield Lopresti, Mr. Elecna and Mrs. Albertson believe that our reopening has been extremely successful thus far. This is based on student, parent, and staff feedback that they've received. Students daily demonstrate feeling safe in school, being prepared to learn, and most of all, happy to be present. Difficulties that have been thought as possible concerns, such as resistance to wear masks, have been practically non-existent. Students who do not attend remote learning sessions are being contacted early enough within the day so that the parents can then turn around so the student can be contacted so the students can often become present for the day. Maintaining cohorts within the building, including arrival and dismissal, as well as our lunch and recess procedures, have all gone very smoothly. Parents have regularly praised our new traffic flow as well. Parents do reach out to communicate their concerns and or difficulties, often through technology and for remote attendance, and we are addressing them as such. CLS staff, in the administration's eyes, in all administration's eyes, I will say, are doing exceptionally well with the new challenges of teaching in this manner, both in person and remote. All teachers are experiencing success with the synchronous learning, although teachers face different challenges than another for a variety of reasons, such as student age, parental involvement, and technology. All are making progress, and we are actively communicating with our staff's certified and non-certified groups to make sure they know that we are listening to them and that we are here for them. And that CLS group has conveyed that through to me, and happy to share that with you. At Bungay School, Mrs. Feige and Mrs. Reed would like to thank the Board of Education, the Reopening Committee, and the entire Bungie staff for their input and guidance in helping to create a highly successful reopening plan for all of our students. They applaud the extraordinary teamwork, ongoing communication with the administration, parents, staff, and students, the meticulous planning, and the execution of a well thought out reopening plan as essential components to the success of our school's successful reopening. The successful opening is attributed to many people. They go on to say, the Seymour Board of Education was always there and is always there to support us and to provide us with valuable and informative feedback from the parent, staff, and students. The survey they provided was extremely helpful in helping schools lay the groundwork for our staff and students' expectations to safely re-enter. Through the ongoing communication, Mr. Wilson consistently provided us with updates and encouragement for a safe reopen. He would frequently contact us, answering our questions, valuing our thoughts and our opinions, and he was there to guide us in the direction to move forward to safely reopen all of our schools. Mr. Wilson was and continues to be our springboard when concerns arise. He has been the compassionate leader. Mrs. Vonda Tenza, Associate Superintendent, was there to help us sort out all of the distance learners as well as the hybrid students. She was there to ensure equity and there to provide the professional learning for our staff that was needed, including our new teachers as well as our distance learning teachers, ensuring that all curriculum resources were available and in order. She has been a teacher's teacher all the way. Mr. Tim Connors continues to provide our school facilities with the necessary changes and requirements to better adapt to the CSDE COVID guidelines. Mr. Connors was able to answer every teacher's questions about their uncertainties at our initial teachers meeting. Along with our custodial staff, Mr. Connors was able to place signs and stickers reminding everyone of the importance of social distancing. Mrs. Rebecca Bennett, our head nurse, our experienced school and district nurse, always remains in calm and is in continuous contact with all administration, constantly updating and keeping us informed of how we plan to keep our students and staff safe following CSDE and NVHD guidance. Having Nurse Bennett in our building, we know we are all well cared for. They go on to thank their compassionate school counselor, Ms. Thea Olette, and our school psychologist, Ms. Chloe Germain. They continue to meet and reach students and families to ensure that they feel safe and comfortable. They have been there to help families who have questions about childcare and any other resources needed. Our Director of Nutrition, Mrs. Cindy Brooks, worked collaboratively with administration to develop a plan to have healthy and nutritious breakfasts and lunches safely delivered to each cohort's classroom. The plan has been highly effective. Mr. Robert Dyer and his IT team have done a wonderful job ensuring that all of our students have a one-on-one Chromebook. They have the support they need while in school and at home, and they've been available to respond to our teachers' needs almost immediately. Whenever a parent emails with a question, they have responded, provided individual lessons, and have been there to help navigate all of this technology. Our Bungie teachers have planned and put in countless hours to ensure that each student has a successful school year. Our teachers have been building a special bond and rapport with each student. Teachers have positively commented there was a learning curve. I felt like a first-year teacher all over again. I have the hang of it now. I get to meet with each student every day. How perfect is that? Our students are going to grow with all of this attention we can give them. I am surprised at how much many of my students have gained on the MAP testing from March until now. They would like to, Mrs. Feige also puts a personal shout out to Mrs. Lauren Reed. She helps in so many different ways, and she's able to wear many different hats and helps out wherever needed. Together, the success of the reopening of the school has truly been a team effort, and for that, they are truly proud to be part of that team. Our middle school, Mrs. Roden and Mrs. Freemuth, they state that in order to gauge if our reentry plan has been successful, there are many qualitative and quantitative data points one can consider. To begin with, our students are smiling or smizing with their masks on. I guess that's an eye smile. When students enter the lunchroom, they sit down with their cohorted groups, 4 to a table, and have conversations with whomever is at the table. No one sits alone, and no one isn't engaged. It is a pleasure to join each grade level in the lunchroom and to see them enjoying time with one another. The students are also timely in arriving and dismissing from the cafe, which also allows our custodial staff the time necessary to clean between each of the respective lunch waves. Our staff is excited to engage in new tech strategies, from the most recent Google breakout rooms to combining all students under the same learning roof via our webcams, to allowing students to take the instructional lead by sharing their screens for discussion. All staff is focusing on what will engage out our learners on either side of the screen. They have been extremely flexible in incorporating bathroom breaks, desk cleaning time, as well as mass breaks while still delivering challenging and rigorous instruction. Our parents are getting our students in on time via drop-off, as well as picking up their students at the end of the day. With their collaboration, the beginning and the ending of our instructional day did not need to be modified at all. Finally, the engagement is evident with our daily average attendance at the middle school hovering at 96.38% for the first 19 days of school. All staff, all teachers, all students, all administrators are working hard to make this year a success. Our high school administration shares the start of the school year has went very well. The faculty have been adjusting to the current teaching environment, providing our students with the best education possible given the circumstances. They've been sharing ideas and approaches while collaborating within their departments and with the entire faculty. New best practices and approaches spread rapidly throughout the building, quickly evolving the instructional approaches within the school. The students have been fantastic. They have been adhering to the guidelines established to maintain a safe learning environment. Student behavioral concerns have been minimal. Overall student attendance has improved over the first 15 days of school. Last year, the average number of absence for each student was 0.86 days. This year, it's down to 0.67 days per student. What is particularly exciting is the interactivity between the teacher, in-person, and remote students. The adaptability of the faculty and students is evident as they work together in the hybrid classroom model. This is also true of athletics. We are incredibly proud of our coaches and our student athletes as they've been preparing for the season and now competing in interscholastic competitions while adhering to all of the safety protocols. Our Director of Pupil Services shares, we're excited to be moving forward, and he'll give a more detailed explanation at the November board meeting about our social emotional learning, but our two social emotional learning programs throughout the district. The elementary, we're in the beginning phases of piloting the Caring School Community Program. This program is going to be implemented using our current responsive classroom practices, utilizing the same morning meeting time to provide direct instruction about a range of social emotional topics. At our secondary level, both the middle school and high school, we'll be piloting the Suite 360 student program. This program will capitalize upon our new one-to-one Chromebook initiative, as students will engage in computer-based lessons weekly. Following each computer-based lesson, students will engage in continued conversations with a teacher to allow for an ongoing discussions about social emotional learning. Staff throughout the district have been working extremely hard on behalf of all of our students, especially with our students with special education services. Special education services are being provided in person as well as through distance learning, teletherapy at all levels. Our Associate Superintendent, Mrs. Tenza, states that I would say yes, for sure, the reopening has been successful. Our Seymour students and teachers are coming to school in person hybrid and remotely hybrid regularly during a time where many are not comfortable attending schools in other districts across our state and across our country. We've been in classrooms, Mr. Wilson and I, in person and virtually, to see happy, hardworking students in each and every one of those rooms. Our teachers deserve the credit, as do our administrators, as do our entire team. Our number of absences have been lower during the month of September than it has been in past years. Full distance learners are attending school virtually at a significantly higher rate than the spring, as evidenced by high weekly attendance and participation data. We report weekly and monthly to the state regarding hybrid, in-person, hybrid remote, and full distance attendance and engagement, and this data is much more positive than it was back in the spring. We credit this success to the tremendous efforts of the teachers to be live virtually with our students regularly throughout each day and their efforts to design challenging lessons that promote student engagement. We also credit this success to every single individual staff member's contribution to the system of learning. Everyone owns a part of this success, and I believe everyone is proud to be a part of the Seymour team. I would also like to share my comments, thanking all of our staff members, our administrators, our students, their hard work, their dedication. It does take a team effort to do this, and everyone is working extremely hard, and we are proud to have everyone back. We are proud that learning is taking place, and we're certainly proud of the hard work of all of those individuals on the team. And part of that team, as I've shared it numerous times, are the members of this Board of Education. So thank you for your part in that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
You're welcome.
Any questions? Any questions for the superintendent? Yes, Mrs. Harmeling.
Thank you for the update. I was having a little bit of a moment. I really didn't understand what that was. I'm not sure. So that's under the superintendent report of how are things going, but yet we were just read to from the voice of 5 different administrators or even more. So I'm just confused as to what that was, Mr. Wilson.
Certainly, I could address that. What it was I asked, when thinking about how we measure success in my letter that I had shared with the community about, I think that it has been a very successful reopening and that we are moving in the right track. As I always do when I speak with my team at meetings and weekly check-in meetings, I asked our team how it was going and how, if they would determine this year opening as a success. I posed the question to them as a team. We talked about it, and those comments that I shared were comments from the team. So that's all that was how we determined the start of the school year being a success, and those were members of the team sharing my sentiments and their sentiments on how it was going from a building perspective as well as a global perspective as a district.
Any other questions?
If I could have a follow-up, if there's no one else with a hand up.
Yes, go ahead.
So it's obviously a personal preference. I'm speaking of myself, but I would much prefer to hear authentic from the voice of our administrators rather than something that has been prepared. And I would rather have it more as a discussion rather than a written script. So that is just one person's opinion.
Any other comments from board members? Any other comments from board members? Okay, then I will move along to information. We have, it's 9, we have A, Seymour Middle School, Bungay Elementary School, Chatfield, Prestige Elementary School. Any questions, any comments on the first 3? Any questions? Okay. Special Education Monthly Enrollment Update. Mr. Boyle, Dr. Boyle? Any questions for Dr. Boyle, or does Dr. Boyle have a comment or comments?
Nothing specific from my point of view, but I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Yes, Mrs. Bruno.
The numbers shared, are you caught up with initials that were paused? Are there a number of kids that are in the evaluation process right now?
We do have a number of students that are in the evaluation process as we speak. Those students I would anticipate would be done with the evaluation and determination by the November meeting. We are trending a little bit lower than this time in previous years. It's not a tremendous number. It's, the function of probably 10 or 12 students were lower than in previous years. I think that will be reflected in the coming month or so with the testing that we're doing currently.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Dr. Boyle? Yes, Mrs. Harmeling.
Again, at the pleasure of the board chair, I'm curious to know if we could start seeing some numbers of students who have 504 plans. I absolutely know that there's a distinction and a difference, and they're not technically classified as special education, but I also know that they do oftentimes receive services, and they are students that do have an identified need. And the reason I'm curious about that is because as we move hopefully rapidly towards a conversation of whether we have more students attending our school, if there's an opportunity to bring back all students with IEPs and 504s, if their parents want them to go back full time, as an intermediary step if the reopening committee and the board is not comfortable with a full reopen. We've heard a lot about how everything is going wonderfully and everyone's online, and a parent wrote in, and I'm in agreement that this is more challenging for the younger students and the older students, but we cannot pretend that there are not students struggling in every single school. And just because someone is 14, 16, 17, 18 years old does not mean that they are doing well with remote learning. We have students with IEPs, with 504s, and students without either of those things who are struggling. And I am really very upset that we don't talk about these things and we just simply act like everything's going hunky-dory, because it is not. So I would
If
like
it's the board's pleasure, I can include the figures on number of students with 504 plans. I don't know that that addresses your greater concern related to the number of students that are struggling. We've had a number of students for years that have had 504 plans. It's not something that the state has regularly monitored, so I could give up-to-date information as of today. I don't have historical trend data because it had never been asked of me before. But I'd be happy to, at least give that piece of information. I don't know that it addresses your whole concern, but I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, Mrs. Harmon, you have a follow-up?
Yeah, through the chair. Thank you, Mr. Stramello. Mr. Boyle, I think that would be super helpful, and no trend lines are necessary at all. I think it's just helpful for the board to understand how many students we have that have been identified as having potential issues, and I'm not even making the claim that everyone with a 504 or an IEP is struggling with distance learning, but it at least gives us in the reopening committee some idea of the size of the populations of students that maybe we should think about bringing back sooner if, again, the district is not ready to move to a full reopening. So I think it would be helpful information for people to have. Thank you.
Of course.
Any other questions for Dr. Boyle? Yeah, go ahead, Kristen Bruno.
Just to follow up on what Mrs. Harmling said, I would also add, and I don't know if this falls to you, Dr. Boyle, or to somebody else, another administrator, is our English language learner population. I think the state is pretty clear about prioritizing, if we're not able to bring everybody back, prioritizing some of our students with high needs or who have those gaps or need specialized programming. So I would ask through the board chair to the superintendent to provide some information about our English language learners as well.
Okay, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Tenza, Mrs. Tenza, and Mr. Boyle, I guess you could provide us that information. Any other questions? Okay, moving along to staff resignations. You see that? Okay, and then I will ask Mr. Martin if there's any other public comment that you received.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I received one more public comment.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Martin, excuse me. Mr. Chairman, point of order. Did we have to approve or add the motion that was emailed to us in regards to the hiring of the instructional paraprofessional, or did I miss that? I'm sorry.
Oh, I guess we should add that to the agenda. And I'm remiss, I did not write that down. So Leanne, can you give us, or at least give us for the record, the name that was changed?
It's Doreen Garcia, instructional para at Bungay School.
That's in place of Amanda Galeta, correct?
Colleen Sadek.
Oh, Colleen Sadek. Okay. but that's on our records. That's not an additional one. That's in place of the one that was on our list, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So the record should show that instead of Amanda Deleta, that it's Doreen Garcia at Bungay School. Everybody has that?
Mr.
Okay.
Stramone, if I could, I was just assuming that that was incorporated into the consent agenda. So, I mean, whatever, if other people feel that way, but for me, that was just to, imply that would be part of the consent agenda. I don't really understand what we need to do with that. It's just a correction, right? It was in the.
Yes, that's all it is, yeah.
Well, just point of clarification, I think it was in addition to the consent agenda. And I'm sorry I'm doing it this time, but I just didn't want to forget. I don't remember it being added at that time.
No, it was not, Jay. Thank you.
Yeah, there were two. I'm looking at it right now. There were two. There was one change in the consent agenda. So if it's okay with the board, I will make a motion to add to the agenda to approve the recommendation of the superintendent to hire Doreen Garcia as an instructional paraprofessional at Bungay Elementary School. That's a motion to add it to the agenda.
Second.
Is there second? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, that was Mr. Hatfield. Okay, all those in favor to add to the agenda? Mrs. Bruno,
Aye, Kristen Bruno.
Mr. Champagne,
Bruce Champagne, yes.
Mr. Garofalo,
Jim Garofalo, yes.
Mrs. Harmeling,
Kristen Harmeling, yes.
Mr. Hatfield,
Mr. Hatfield, yes.
Mr. Kubik,
Peter Kubik, yes.
Mr. Stanek.
Fred Stanek, yes.
Okay, so that's added to the agenda to hire her. Now, I believe we need to have another motion to accept the superintendent's recommendation.
I'll
I'd
make
like-
the motion. Oh, go ahead.
No, go, Jay, you're good.
Jay Hatfield, I make the motion to approve the recommendation of the superintendent to hire Doreen Garcia as an instructional paraprofessional at Bungay Elementary School.
Okay, and who seconds that?
Kristen Harmeling will second.
Okay, thank you. All right, everybody is clear what we're doing? Okay, Mrs. Bruno? Or
Yes.
Yeah. I don't think I should have asked first, any discussion? Okay. Mrs. Bruno, would you please again?
Sure, Kristen Bruno, yes.
Mr. Champagne,
Bruce Champagne, yes.
Mr. Garofalo,
Jim Garofalo, yes.
Mrs. Harmeling,
Kristen Harmeling, yes.
Mr. Hatfield,
Jay Hatfield, yes.
Mr. Kubik,
Peter Kubik, yes.
Mr. Stanek. Oh, I mean, no, sorry, Mrs. Nesteriak, my apology.
Yes.
Mr. Stanek,
Fred Stanek, yes.
Mr. Stramella votes yes. Okay, Mr. Martin, back to you with the next public comment, please.
All right, thank you. To the board, good afternoon. My name is Rachel Irizarry, and I am the mother of 3 students at Bungay Elementary School. I have a kindergartner who is repeating kindergarten due to a developmental delay and an ADHD diagnosis on a 504 plan. I have a neurotypical second grader. I also have a 5th grade student with ADHD who is also on a 504 plan. I'm a registered nurse working in the emergency department. I understand the intricacies of COVID-19 as I have been working through it since the very beginning. With all of those facts being stated, I am writing to urge the board to return our students, at least those in elementary school, back to full-time in-person study. I spend the entirety of my day trying to navigate my children through their schoolwork. I then go to work in the ED until the late night, very early morning hours. I have placed my 3-year-old in child care 3 days a week so that I can give attention to my Bungay students. In all honesty, we are all failing. I am doing my best, and I have been met with emails from teachers stating that my children should only be eating when the schedule dictates and should be 100% focused on the meets when they are logged on. How am I supposed to be able to ensure that this is occurring if I am jumping from computer to computer, just trying to make sure that they are where they need to be at the correct time? According to American College of Pediatricians, children from 5 to 18 years of age should only have between 1 to 2 hours of screen time per day. Children's screen time, she references 2019, September 30th, retrieved September 29th, 2020 from https://acpeds.org/blog/children in screen time. My children are spending at least 5 hours per day, 3 days a week in front of a screen. I find this reliance on distance learning for our youngest learners unacceptable. They have missed out on the last 2.5 months of school last year and are going to miss out on at least 2 months this school year. Those that I have spoken to in the community are divided on the issue. The parents of older children seem to feel as if distance learning is working well. The parents of elementary age children seem to be the ones struggling the most. This is an unprecedented time in our history, but how long are we supposed to carry on this way? The CDC recommendations are ever changing, and due to the low numbers that our district is seeing, I believe it is in the best interest of our learners to return to a more full-time schedule, distancing as much as possible. Masking and frequent hand washing are at the apex of preventing the spread of the virus. In addition to the effects of screen time on our children, we are also ignoring the impact that lack of play and face-to-face interactions with their peers have on our children. I urge you to consider a more full-time schedule for our elementary students. Thank you for your time and consideration. Rachel Irizarry.
Okay, any other, that's the last one,
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes, that's it.
Okay, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Mr. Garofalo. Second?
Second,
Somebody second it?
Jay Hatfield.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Good evening, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.